This episode is sponsored by JB Media. Tired of searching the web for a map that really brings to life the world you're setting for your players? Have you ever found one that's almost what you're looking for, but you need to add a little chaos and destruction to it? Look no further. JB Media designs maps and assets for your virtual tabletop. That's right. If you have a vision, JB Media can bring it to life, creating an immersive experience for your players that's unique to your campaign. Whether you're looking for a custom map for your VTT or simply assets for your maps, JB Media has you covered. You'll find bundles for summoning circles, ruins, rubble, things that are definitely not mimics, and more. Available for purchase on Roll20 and Patreon. Check out their work and give them a follow on Instagram at jbmedia.dnd and on Patreon. Links provided below in the episode description. Hey there! Welcome to the Wicked Cool Kids podcast, where a group of like-minded nerds hang out and talk about stuff, mostly D&D, but sometimes real life creeps in as well. I'm Kristin, and today I'm sitting down with my friends Lee, Jason, and Joe. Hi, friends.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
This episode is all about relationships. Playing Dungeons & Dragons with people, you are bound to form relationships, both in and out of the party, as well as in and out of the actual game. These people I'm speaking with today are people that I hold amongst the most dear in my tribe. For me, this is D&D. But it's not just about building relationships outside of the game. Relationships within the game can be an interesting dynamic as well. How did you meet this group you're adventuring with? Did two of you come from the same village? Are you related? Enemies putting aside your differences for the greater good? Lovers? Let's dive in and talk about the kinds of bonds and connections you find within the game, and maybe even how they affect your feelings outside of the game. Are you ready?
Yeah. Always.
Okay, so I know we've touched on this slightly in a previous episode, but Jason and I have played characters that are siblings and more recently fellow products of the same cult with an already established relationship prior to starting the game. Lee and I have played twins twice, actually, but those aren't the only relationships that exist. Connecting characters is something that you're really good at, Jason, within your game, kind of weaving those relationships in. For example, in your newest installment of the campaign, you've connected certain characters. One example is Vex is the grandchild of her character in the last game. Joe's character, Karn, was connected to the world through another one of Lee's old characters being associates. One of Lee's current characters is a business associate of sorts with Chet's character. So let's talk about how you go about interweaving relationships within your world and the pros and cons of it all.
I look for similarities in terms of job professions or location first, and backstory helps a lot. And I'll say to my players, like Lee said, "Oh, I'm this character. I'm pretty shady. I might be into this kind of stuff." And Chet was like, "Well, I used to be part of this little gang when I was younger, and I've grown up, and I'm a little bit more of a established thief now." So it wasn't a big jump for me to go, well, there might be some connections. It makes sense for these two characters to at least know of each other, if not know each other directly. So let's see if they will have a relationship, and that means they can establish what they know about each other going forward and already kick the campaign off with that relationship to go forward. Other relationships, stuff like Karn and his profession was what I grabbed in order to go, oh, you know Auric. Auric was this super influential artificer in the city, and you're also an artificer. It makes sense also professionally for you guys to know each other, which means you probably know this little thing that he made years ago called Fred. And fortunately, Auric's not on the scene anymore, but Fred has turned up, and you recognize that, and you recognize the work that's gone into him because you know his creator. So it immediately piques curiosity for your characters to introduce yourself as, oh, I know this person that you know, and it allows you guys to then just flourish with that relationship moving forward. I don't know, I see patterns, and I connect those patterns together, I guess, is my method.
Yeah. So then we've all kind of had that experience in Jason's world where we come in and we already have an established relationship. How do you guys feel about that versus maybe in other campaigns when you're all just kind of thrust into a position together and hey, you're at a tavern and you're looking at this notice board and you all decide to go on the same quest together and you don't have any relationships starting? Do you prefer one way or the other? Have you not really even cared enough to think about it more than just right now in this instance?
I don't mind too much either way. I think I if I'm asked by a DMO, how do you know? You need to think about how you know all the other characters. I have a little bit of a panic because I'm worried about same thing I always talk about. I'm worried about stepping on toes. I don't want to impose my character's backstory or my thoughts on someone else's. So I don't want to say, oh, well, I think I would know them from the coffee shop and then find out that they wanted their character to hate coffee and never go into a coffee shop. So that can be a source of kind of stress for me. But um, I I enjoy collaborating with other people to try and come up with those kind of relationships. But equally, if we all meet having not met each other character wise, and our first encounter is you all enter a bar and you sit at the same table because there's a job board there. It means the first interaction is getting to know each other and learning about the
Mhm.
character. And I have found that when we have pre-built relationships, sometimes that initial introduction goes by the wayside a little bit, and I find I know less about the characters I'm playing with because there's an assumption that, oh, we already know each other.
That's
Whereas
interesting.
when we meet at a job board, everything we have to learn from scratch. So I personally know that I make a bigger effort to be like, oh, but what do they like and what do they do and who are they?
Mhm. That's interesting. Also, never ever, I don't even think in fantasy world would I ever just be like, hey, it's a group of random people right there sitting at a table. I should probably go and join them. Thank God it's fantasy. I
That's
definitely
why
would
it's
never do
fantasy.
that in real
Yeah.
life. Like, nope. Hi,
I think
stranger danger.
there's an element on the players to put themselves in that situation where you're going to group up though as well.
Yeah,
Otherwise, what's the point of
Yeah.
playing the game?
Playing the
It's
game.
on the
I know,
players
I
to
know.
go whatever this first sessions is until we get an actual relationship and rapport. I'm going to have to
Hmm.
just go along with it and to
Yep,
establish these connections first. And I think that's
sure.
totally what you accept in joining a campaign.
I know, I
But
know.
like Joe said about sitting on a table, I watched an anime not too long ago, and the name escaped me. But it's an adventure and dungeon delving anime.
Mm.
Each of them can't find a team, and without noticing, go and just sit at an empty table that's there, but they all sit down at the same time, contemplating to themselves, looking down at the drink. They all have these like little flashbacks, and then simultaneously look up at each other and go, I'm at a table with a bunch of people, and one of them's a tank, one of them's a wizard, one of them's a healer.
Hmm.
So you can do so as long as it's done um, creatively and it's interesting and stuff like that. Because then you
Yeah,
give the players the opportunity to go, oh, you're thinking about your backstory. What happened recently? What led you to this tavern? And then other
yeah,
people get a little insight to why they're there as well. So it
that's fair.
forces them to sort of think about that backstory in effect
Yeah.
straight away as well.
I think for me it's sort of like a comfort thing with having like relationships how you start. If I'm really comfortable with the group and I know all the people, I'm more than happy to not have a connection. Like I find it easier. But if I'm starting a new group with people I don't know and there's only one person I know in there, it's easier for me to go in with a connection with that person. So I've got that sort of safety net to fall back on and to be able to bring up topics I can speak about easily uh, with somebody I'm already comfortable with. But yeah,
Now, let's just take this and then flip it and look at it from a DM perspective. From a DM perspective, is it easier, the same for you to have characters that come in that are pre-established? Is that helpful? Is that like it doesn't matter? It's, I've got the same amount of work either way. How does that affect you on the other side of the screen?
I don't think it makes it that much of a difference, to be honest. Again, it just all depends on what type of players you've got. Some of them will definitely put the work in, like Jason was saying. When you go to a first session, you should all be sort of like trying to make connections with each other because if you do, obviously if you don't have a relationship, because that's the whole point of you guys being together. You're going to go on an adventure together. So trying to not go with that short amount of rail track that you need to sit on to set up the adventure, it makes it very difficult for a DM. So
Mhm.
if you're gonna be like that, what was the point joining the game? You want to join a group of people and explore and go on an adventure. If you don't want to do that, maybe it's not for you.
Yeah, maybe play a solo campaign at that point.
Yeah.
Or play an RPG game somewhere.
I think we've briefly touched on this in a previous episode, but it's nice to be able to expand on it. And I feel like it's a great opportunity to role play as a loner who secretly wants to be with people, or who is a loner because they're an asshole, but really still need the people around. Like there's ways of doing it so that you can be that loner style character, as long as you consider the reason that they are there, whether it's because, I mean, so keep bringing the same people up. I'll bring up Scratch again, right?
Mhm.
He was in his past life a loner, but he surrounds himself with people that essentially can keep him alive. He's all about the con and recognizes that he does not have strength or prowess. Yeah, he's got spells, but mostly his art is in deception. So he is not a loner specifically because he needs to surround himself with people that can help. And I think that's key, is you can be the person that doesn't like being in big groups, as long as there's a reason that you are in that big group.
Yeah, it's on the player, isn't it, to find that reason of why I'm part of this group. And that can be totally for selfish reasons. It can be, oh, this group gets me into this kind of place or into this situation that I want to be in, or gets me closer to the information that I'm looking for. As long as you're not using also that frame of mind to go, I'm going to fuck over the party at any point I get the opportunity to. There's unwritten rules with players, and you don't want to be that problem player that's constantly either off on their own, doing their own thing, or ruining the plans of the other party members. Because you start getting into real problematic players at that point. It can destroy games.
Well, funny you should mention that. The next thing I want to talk about is the loner. We've all played with someone who likes to be the loner. I am sometimes that person that goes in and portrays that person. I feel like it's a tricky line to kind of toe. Staying true to your character whilst also remembering that you're part of the group can be difficult to manage, but it can be done. And it can lead to some really interesting, I think, character arcs, right? And make for really powerful relationships throughout the end of the story, right? So let's talk about our experiences with this, the good, the bad, the ugly. Have you played a loner? How did it work out for you? How did it, affect, I guess, the party in general? As a DM, is it really, really obnoxious to have that character? Has it ever caused any drama, like even in real life, outside of the party dynamic? And yeah.
Joe, would you like to start with Scratch, since you already mentioned them, and how you sort of play that kind of loner, like preferably would be alone but needs these kind of relationships in order to get through what he's currently doing?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I feel like um, the one of the benefits of being a loner is that um, I don't have to care about my party members too much. Like, so the campaign that Scratch is in at the moment, he's actually forming bonds that I don't think he would have done in the past. In fact, I know he wouldn't have done in the past. But essentially, like I say, he cares about his companions mainly in the capacity of keeping himself alive. In the previous campaign that he came from, which was Curse of Strahd, people kept dying, and him not having an emotional connection and not really caring about his companions helped a lot, because he would have been a puddle of mess otherwise. Except there was one fellow companion that he slept with really early on, and they died like the next session. So that sucked. But outside of that, yeah, his main attachments are out of necessity. I hope. I think you guys can speak to this because you're in it. I don't think he causes any issues in the campaign with his attitude. Um, the only potential issue I feel like he almost caused once was there was an encounter happening and he sort of made very little effort to move forward with the group because, frankly, he was scared of what was up ahead. So went back to help an individual instead. But I
Mhm.
mean, we play to our characters, right? And that's what he would have done. I don't
Yep.
think he causes any issues, but maybe you guys think otherwise.
No, I don't.
I,
Never felt that.
I mean, he causes issues with Miranda, but I think half of that is Miranda being.
She's the one emotional like connection that he's actually latching onto as well.
I mean, I know, and she's also got that reciprocity there, but like, she is very much so her brother. She's got a lot of siblings, but one specific brother, her family, and like the mission. And then she literally, one of her tenets is that relationships make you weak. They make you vulnerable. They give you uh, openings to have other people use you and hurt you, and so she doesn't, right? And it's been interesting, and we will circle back to it because there are times with her and with Winter, who actually I'm gonna ask Lee about. Lee runs the campaign that Winter is in. She is my Tabaxi necromancer. Like I said, an absolute delight, except for she's not. She is absolutely a loner and will do whatever she wants whenever she wants. If the party's going this way, she's literally just gone like, peace out, I'm going to go over this way because I said that I thought that this was important and you guys didn't listen to me and I don't care what you have to say. Half the time she's not listening to the other people because she's just so in her head and focused on what she's doing. So I think that that's a group of people that all love each other on the outside, right? And so it makes it both easier to play that on the inside, but also harder because you don't want to actually ruin those relationships in moments when it feels real. But Lee, have you? Has anybody ever? And it's okay. I mean, maybe I won't even listen. You can just talk to the audience right now. Has anybody ever come to you and been like, Kristin needs to stop with Winter because she's absolutely terrible?
No, I don't. See, I don't think she's as bad as you make her out to be.
She's
Yeah,
not. She really isn't. Everybody just
she'll
thinks
go
she's bad.
against she'll go against some things the party like wanting to do and stuff, but that happens in the majority of D&D groups. People have arguments or disagreements, difference of opinions, and they might want to do both plans at once, and some will go off to do this, and others will go the other way. Yeah, I don't. The only player, well, not player, yeah, player. I'm not going to say the name. They're not in the Discord group or anything like that. But I had one person, and they want to be the focus of the group. If the attention was not on them at all, it was a fucking nightmare to try and run. And I'd spoke to him, said to him, like, you need to reel it back. You need to know that this is not just about your character. Other characters have like got stuff on, and everybody's here to have fun. It's a group game, and we had this one scene. It was set up for this character who was going through some stuff, and he was able to get past this door that nobody else could get through. And it was, I think everybody sort of knew it was his sort of like arc where it was going for him. And she tried to get through the door, wouldn't work for her. She tried to get somebody else to get through the door for her, and it wouldn't work. Then when this character went to do it and the door started moving, she messaged me on the side and said, I want to put loads of rocks into my pockets and carry them in my arms and then walk into the water to drown. I was like, yeah, yeah. So that to me is like selfish player. There's something going on that's important for like everybody else. That's like the loner player that you don't want in your group. There's something going on that's important to another character, and you are trying to make it about you and take away from that situation, rather than like support them or just stay quiet.
That's just like the spotlight hoggers,
Yeah,
isn't
main
it?
character
It's like,
syndrome.
oh,
Main character syndrome, yep.
It's not
really
about
bad.
me right now, so I'm going to do everything I can to make it about me, even if that means putting my character in life or death situations, so the team have to then come and save me from what I'm doing. I was like, just don't do it.
Yeah,
Just go.
that was a turning point, and we ended up parting ways after that because it was just was
Yeah.
not fair on the rest of the group for that. Like it was supposed to be a really big thing for their character, and this individual tried to take it away. And I was like, no, that's not happening. This is not how it's played. So yeah, that's nowhere near what winter's like. So
No.
there you
Jeez.
go. Don't
Yeah,
need to worry about
sometimes
I guess if that's the bar.
Sometimes I feel like I hog the spotlight a lot, but I don't mean to do it on purpose. I don't like it when things are silent, and some of the players in some of our games are just happy to sit there silently until a fight starts. So I always feel like I'm role playing a lot, especially with you, Kristin, and you, Joe.
Yeah.
When we play with certain other people, it's just quiet, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to say something because I don't want you
Big awkward pauses
or some other DM to be sitting there waiting for something to happen that's not coming. I'm just going to fill this silence with something and keep it going, and that oftentimes makes the attention more on me indirectly when I don't want it to be. I just don't want it to either the DM to feel rushed into moving on forward if they don't want to. Or other players feel like they're not like interacting, and I do try and pull other players in by asking them a question or like doing it, and it's like, oh, here's an opportunity during the conversation and the role play. I can hand it over to another player and go, what do you think, such and such a person. But it is a fine line to kind of tread, and it's nice to get feedback from other people, especially the DM, if they're going, oh, you kind of talked a lot that game, and there's other people that were trying to butt in there that you talked over, because sometimes when you're in the moment you don't realize someone else is trying to talk as well, so you just end up going like steamrolling through them. So it's nice to I'd always appreciate a DM or another player going, you talked a lot then. I tried to jump in, but it's just like it was hard because you were going. Like that constructive feedback I think is helpful in D&T games, and especially maintaining those relationships outside of the game as well.
Yeah, definitely have an open communication with your players and DM. That's probably the key to it all.
Yeah, I mean we've talked lots of times about the concept of, hey, just talk to your players, hey, just talk to your DM, and it's so important. But equally important, I'm gonna think on myself, is not letting that be a worry so much. I feel like I spend so much of my time being like, well, like I said, I don't want to step on people's toes, and I hope I don't upset you guys. I don't know, but you guys do talk to me very openly, so I do know, because if Scratch was an issue, for example, you would have told me by now. So yeah, open communication between DM and players is super important, but also don't be too hard on yourself and don't worry too much about the effect you're having, as long as you are being open with that communication and asking people, is this okay?
Yeah.
So I first of all, to anybody listening that ever plays in a game with me, if you feel like I just talk too much, I first of all agree with you, because after our Thursday session, I literally apologized to Lee. I sent him a message and I was like, I'm sorry, it was the Kristin show. But again, it was one of those where we were down some players, and then other players were distracted because they had dinner that they were eating and other things that were going around in their house. And so it took a lot of the role play out of it because those people could not actually interact. So instead of having it just be dead space, right, there's us trying to fill it in.
Fill the void, constantly.
So, if at any point in time anybody ever feels like they need me to shut up, like if you don't even want to say it in those words, fine, we'll come up with some other word like pickle face. I don't know. Whatever it is that makes sense to you. Just
being one of those players who literally abandoned you halfway through a sentence because I had children jumping up and down on a bed.
But exactly to my
I
point. That's
really
why
appreciated what you did.
I jump in and go like, oh, Miranda, from the other room, just because I know as a player Joe's not there. He's having to go and do something. I will fill those voids in, because I could role play for an entire session in the same room. So. It's a real problem that I try to fix for myself. But yeah, if you need a void filling, I'll I won't finish that
always.
sentence.
Yep. So between different kinds of characters, loners, even like the ornery character, so we brought up Miranda, she's not always nice, and a lot of it is a defense mechanism. A lot of it is her trying to protect herself and not be seen as weak and vulnerable and anything like that. But sometimes that can lead to upset, right? Especially if you have relationships with these people outside of the game. Sometimes it can lead you to taking something personally, right? There have been times where I've had to check in with people after the game. Hey, I said this. I just want to make sure. Did I cross any lines? Was I too mean? Like, if you need me to pull back, I will pull back. Lee, in one of our games, I gave him a gift that I thought was a good replacement for something that he lost. And he basically was like, fuck you, buddy. I don't need this. This isn't even close to what I wanted or doesn't mean anything. And, it upset my character. But then afterwards, he was like, I felt really bad. Or like, it didn't feel good for me as a character to be mean to you as a character. And I just want to make sure that we are good. So I know how I personally go about it. Like I said, I will message people outside or even in the moment during the game. Like, I will take a hot second and I'll go to a Discord private message and I'll say, hey, are we still okay? Am I bringing up any like childhood trauma for you? Like, what's going on? Just if we need to stop, we need to stop. And I think that can be really valuable for people who have relationships outside of it. But obviously I'm not the only one, because Lee has, checked in with me afterwards. But is that something that crosses your minds as well? Maybe you don't play super mean characters. I don't know. I do know, but you know what I mean.
Do I play mean characters? Don't think I play mean characters. If it's mean, it's usually for a reason. Like Shin recently was a little bit standoffish against some kid who wanted to come on a journey. He also doesn't like people, but also he knows this fella's a kid and he's trying to put him off the whole welcoming to the party. Let's go out into this really dangerous world and start killing monsters. Shin knows what's out there. And is standoffish because he doesn't want this kid to die. He's not against the kid, but he will be mean towards them in order to discourage them from coming with them. But I mean, that's towards the DM in that specific scenario, but I don't think I play characters that are mean. Maybe I've played as a DM characters that are mean towards you, but that's kind of part of the job, is playing the bad guys. In terms of
Willie
characters,
can be spicy.
He can be spicy, but he means well, and it's a play on traditional boomer tropes as well. So he's mean, but it's not. I don't think it's game breaking mean. He's not going to disrupt the whole party because of what he does. So
yeah.
I think Sam's the first sort of meanish character that I've played, and it is difficult. It is very difficult because that's not, like we spoke about before, it's not how you are as a person, to try and put yourself in them shoes and play that and treat people not like shit, but not like how you would, not how you respond to things. It's a tough one. So yeah, I definitely always try and check in if I feel like I've upset somebody, and I hope people, if I do upset somebody and I've done it without messaging, I hope people will be able to just say like, I wasn't really happy with that. Can we, wind back on that or do something with that? Because
can we just not next
yeah,
time?
can we just not next time? Yeah, I mean that's totally fine. Because at the end of the day, it is a game that we're playing and we're there to have fun, and I don't want to, even if it's like I have to change parts of my character, I will do, because we're there for fun. We're not there to have a rough time. For me to be like treat people like shit, that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say I like. You ask if, have you ever played as a mean character? I think, no, I haven't. Maybe I should. And then I start thinking about what that would actually look like.
It's hard.
And I think, actually, that doesn't sound fun at all. Like, I sort of enjoy being irritating, like Scratch lighting.
You don't say.
Cheeky irritation is always it's always pretty fun. Yeah.
Like Scratch changing your bathwater temperature repeatedly from underneath, and like Hurrah speaking deliberately even more slowly than he is actually capable of speaking, and just not really taking notice of the party. And like there are things that I enjoy doing that could be considered mean, but I feel like they're I think you said it, Jason, they're more like playful than they are actually cruel or hurtful. But I've never played what you might consider an evil race.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line between being mean though and playing evil characters, because evil
Yeah, that's true.
characters can still have great relationships with the people that are around them. They're just evil externally, from a moral standpoint for the rest of the world,
yeah.
but they're not technically bad people within their small circle.
Yeah, that's true.
The villain's not the villain in their own story.
They're the hero, aren't they?
I mean, it's interesting though. I will just say, because I am not that person, and I enjoy kind of pushing myself roleplay wise into places that I don't go. We talked about this in character creation, how I always kind of find pieces of me, and so I've been challenging myself to just keep pushing and find somebody who isn't me. And even like I find pieces of me in Miranda, even though Miranda is 100% not me. Like I would never say the things that Miranda says to intentionally hurt people. I am so as a person constantly worried about people being upset by something that I've done or said, or unintentionally. Like, if I want to be a bitch, you will absolutely know it. But like in general, I'm not Miranda, and that can be really hard to kind of work and push through. And I don't want to say it's a fun exercise. It's an interesting exercise. So if you do want to play a mean character, I think that you could do it. I do think that you personally might also struggle in the same ways that I do. And you're like, I just want everybody to know that I'm not really this person. Like I didn't, like when they said it, it wasn't me that was saying it, and I didn't really feel that way. So I just wanted to make sure that you know that we're okay.
At some point, I would love to play a really mean, horrible, nasty character, join the session exactly on time, play the session, and then leave immediately as soon as we're done, and just not say a word. Just have it,
Deuces.
leave everything in people's mind, and try and leave all that anxiety behind. It won't work, but I'd love to do it.
Wow. Okay. Well, you work on that. I'll let you just ruminate with it for a second. So that's a little bit on that emotional damage kind of spectrum, right? Speaking of emotional damage, Jason, we're going to talk about backstory relationships. I know that I've said that I like to start my backstory either with my parents or my grandparents. Like I start it way further on the line than just me, and I create relationships. And I know that there are some dungeon masters, Jason, Lee, that like to have relationships that they can manipulate throughout the campaign, and that does it gives you a real sense of weight and gravity to your situations, right? I think that it's good, and I always kind of, I think, hand you guys things on a platter with my backstories. But let's talk about bringing that ammunition to the table. In your backstories, do you generally have relationships there for dungeon masters to manipulate, or for you to fall back on and just use as kind of fodder to talk about in conversations? Does the DM side of you affect how you implement those relationships in your backstory? And I have them there because I know that I would want them as a DM, so I'm going to give them to my DM to screw around with me with.
Yeah, I think that's sort of like my logic is, I put them in because it gives the DM something to use. Like if there's something they need me to do and it's of urgency, yeah, throw my father's in danger and he's being held at will and we have to we need to get there and then. That's gonna make like a fire under my ass and make me get there because you would in real life. Well, if you had a good relationship, but most of my characters tend to do that. But yeah, you just put it. It gives it so that the players will rush to that and put some weight to whatever's happening. If you don't get there on time, if you don't make it there, then you're going to lose somebody who's very important to you. That might really mess your character up or have an effect on them. I think putting it in there is good for the DM, and that's why I usually throw it in. But it does also, like you said, it does help having somebody in your backstory that you can talk about, saying, "Oh yeah, my father, yeah, he was a great fisherman. He did this and sailed over here."
The
Helps with
inventor of
roleplay.
toaster strudel.
Toaster strudel, yeah, 100%. But yeah, it's made that fish dish. But it's brilliant to have something to be able to fall back on and talk to. So you've got that role play to just talk freely and spurt it out without having to go, right, I need to think about this. What am I going to say? I've got to remember that for next time because I've just made it up. I've got to make a note of this, and then you're sort of pulling yourself away from the situation rather
Mhm.
than you've already got that all up there because you've wrote it down and thought about it already. You just blurt it
Yeah, I
out and
think
flow with it.
it's overlooked quite a lot. Those backstory relationships with family members, because it also gives you something to role play with other players and not necessarily for the DM. You can start talking about, my wife is trapped in this amulet that's around my neck, and here's the story about how you do it, and it gives you an excuse because it's an item that's on you, or like the mirror that Sam's got. Like, go, why is that mirror so precious to you? And then you have the opportunity to lie, or tell the truth about what what it's for, and it does create those deeper connections and relationships with the other players' characters as well, because of learning history of your character and bonding via those I don't know, trauma events or external relationships to what you're currently doing, and it humanizes them a little bit more for the other players as well. So.
In contrast, I have found that having stuff like that written into my backstory already actually damages my RP rather than helping it. Because if I have written into my Khan, great example, we had a good idea of who his parents were and what they did, and as far as I know, they were dead and gone, or whatever, but they were gone one way or another. And then as Jason started weaving them back into the story, I had to play mental gymnastics to try and work out how I could give more history about them, more relevance to them. That because I'd already set some things in stone, I was a little more restricted on where I could go and what I could do and how my brain was working. Whereas if I'd just gone with it, the times that I have just done it and I've totally improvised, I've been able to, on the fly, just come up with something and maybe keep it vague enough that we can then work together to flesh it out, rather than it being, oh, well, they wouldn't have done that because of all these other events that I've already written down that might not have come out yet. But also, if I've got it written down, I've got to read. I've got to,
Yeah, you
read
got to
to find the
refer to
information.
the sheet.
Gotta remember.
I get that, Joe, because it's playing the game of what from the perspective of my character, what is their backstory. So when you start talking about stuff from the perspective of Khan, his parents disappeared, and he thinks, oh, they're probably dead. That's the most likely scenario here. But from a DM's point of view, I go, his character doesn't know that they're dead or not. They just disappeared one day. I'm gonna use that, and it's being loose, that it's writing your backstory from the perspective of your character, and not going, here's my, like, this happened and it's all this. It creates it a little bit, makes it looser for the DM to then manipulate that backstory and then throw in those curveballs of go, oh, actually your parents didn't die. They're actually in this
Surprise!
location. Or they weren't actually just petty thieves, they're actually undercover agents for somebody else, and they've actually been captured all this time. And they weren't, like, it was the enemies that you thought that you had, but actually the allies of your parents instead. And it allows you to do those curveballs, and it keeps the backstory relevant within the game, and allows you to add that little bit more trauma, because, like, oh, this character, he's over his parents, it's been years, they're dead, you know, he moves on. This is just a note in my backstory that was a bullet point that threw me forward to the point I am now. And then I just come in and go, no, they're not.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
So it's just changing those stories round that way, just I think helps create a little bit more of a dynamic storyline for individual characters, which I've been going over in my head constantly for your guys' game tonight, about how I'm going to do that, implement your backstories. So I'm excited for you guys to find out.
How can I really, really, really hurt them?
Well, that's not
Speaking
that.
of, the one thing, and you just mentioned it, and our resident rat god in our world has a wife and kids. I have not come to the table with a spouse or children ever in any of my characters. Um, I have then played a character who was a child of one of those other characters, but that was after that campaign was already done. And I'm thinking that if I honestly reflect on that, that maybe that's a Kristin defense mechanism, because there are people in my life that I hold really dearly, and that in my fantasy world, maybe I don't feel like having the um, ideations of those people being manipulated and hurt and used and whatnot. So that might be why I stay away from those. I don't know. Maybe I should try it one time. Who knows? But um, you, Jason, obviously have a character that has a wife, and that has a very specific, I mean, that is, I think, the genesis of that character going to do anything, right?
Yeah.
Your speedy spider wife?
Yes, we were cursed by a witch or a dragon. It could have been anything. The curse doesn't matter. I said that something has cursed us. My wife was a witch. She has upset the wrong person. I was just the log cutter, and she fancied me, and I was just the commoner until I married this witchy wife, and I go, oh, she's witchy. She does all the potions and stuff, and she does these herbs and helps out the local villagers. And I'm out here chopping wood down and making little carvings for the kids and stuff. I was just like a normal dude, but then she goes and does something to upset someone, and it affects me directly because I'm married to her. And his whole story, I hope, is an arc to go, my wife is now a spider, and I'm holding it in this necklace, and I'll take it out when I can, but to keep her close to me and keep her safe, she's in this little tube that's always around my neck, so I can take her along with me while I try and fix this solution. Also, I'm only alive because I ended up chopping off like my leg in order to not turn into a spider, because I knew she's already a spider. One of us has to get us out of this situation. My leg's off, and a spider leg grew out of it. So he's walking normally because he's a somatic hybrid, so he's human, half beast. So that's the way I've weaved that into the story. And his whole arc, or his whole reason for doing anything he's doing, and why he's getting better, and why he's making all this gold. He's making like 50 gold for an adventure, where previously he's making maybe 3 gold a year just from selling wood carvings, because that's a commoner's kind of income. It was modest. He lived in the woods. He hunted for his food. He didn't need a lot of gold. And now he's just like got all this money. Everything's new to him. He's like, why weren't I adventuring sooner?
Yeah.
And I'm actually discovering all these dangers that are in the world. It's not just a peaceful little life in the forest anymore. It's a whole situation that's going to be life or death up until the point he succeeds in doing what he's doing. And and give Jaffa all that ammunition to go, this is what's happened. I don't know who it is who's done this to my wife. That is totally in your hands. I'm going to give you that creative opportunity to say, well, it's the dragon at the end of the campaign, or it's the dragon's advisor, and she was doing something on the side that upset them. She wouldn't make them a potion of certain kind, or divulge certain intelligence. So they got cursed in some way. Or maybe it was a witch coven that is separate from the main story that she kept on denying. Maybe she left because of the love for my character. And to be part of the coven, you have to be unwed. It opens up so many different pathways.
Sure.
And the other players' characters can sympathize with that as well. Because it's a love loss story, which they can all kind of understand.
What about you two? Have you ever come to the table with, I mean, Scratch may have babies that he doesn't even know about, like all over the world, little like birdlings squawking about.
As far as I know, Scratch hasn't slept with any other bird-like creatures, and he has a cloaca, so he probably doesn't have any kids. No, I don't think I have. I mean, Odo desperately wants relationships and love, for sure. But I don't think I've actually played someone that's got them already. Though I thinking back to my campaign, Liam and John played a married halfling couple, and they were two of my favourite characters to watch play, because it led to some very natural, very easy RP for guys who weren't used to the game and they just went for it. because they knew
Mhm.
how to behave as an old married couple. It was great.
No, I don't think I've ever come in with a wife or child.
Hmm.
Closest thing would have been Auric getting in a relationship with the she called
That's
Cat
in game though,
Catherine. Yeah,
right? Her
yeah,
name
yeah.
doesn't matter. It was terrible.
Yeah,
But
yeah. It's
is it
great.
like Caitlin or
That's it, Caitlin, the
look at
drow.
me? I didn't even
Yeah,
have to pull my
the
notes out
drow.
for that. Um,
But yeah,
oh
It's
god.
interesting
that
though.
was formed, and then he became really attached to her.
Mhm.
Um,
She
that
became
thought
his
that.
associate in his sort of like group afterwards as well, giving intel and sympathize with him,
Mhm.
even though she was there to kind of backstab him from the beginning anyway. Uh,
But that even forming relationships in game after you've written your backstory and doing things like that definitely gives the DM stuff to roll with and play with,
yeah.
because then Jason knew that I had this connection that he could pull on and either manipulate manipulate my character to do
It's
what he
all
Yeah.
about
needs
the
to do.
manipulation, what I do with my
Yeah.
characters. But Evelina has expressed recently that she would like to play in a campaign where we are a spouse, where we're just a
Mhm.
married couple, so we can kind of play ourselves, but in a fantasy world and do all this cool stuff. And
Yeah.
she's expressed that, which I think would be real cool to do with a spouse, to play that kind of relationship in the fantasy D&D world setting.
Yeah.
I think it'd be pretty interesting to what we get up to, because we have the access to the magic to do things for each other as well. And I
Yeah.
don't know, it just seems like it would be an interesting thing to play out, because if one of us does die, that'd be really interesting to see how we would deal with that in game.
Mhm. Well, speaking of romance and Valentine's Day being still fresh in the air, let's talk a little more about romantic relationships, specifically about NPC romance or even romantic relationships between two PCs, like those two little halflings you were talking about in your campaign, Joe. Um, how do you feel about those kind of relationships within the game, and when is it too much? Is it ever too much? Does it ever like go, okay, guys, we don't need to have all of that right now, just very colorfully explained to us, or like how do we feel about it?
I feel super awkward because I feel like sometimes those kind of relationships are, um, I don't want to say naturally occurring, but you build friendships between your characters even if you as people don't necessarily get on, and vice versa. Even if you're best friends, sometimes your characters just will not get on, and I feel like it's very easy for that to eke over into the romantic side of things, especially because in a roleplay setting, playground tactics seem to be more prevalent than in the real world.
I've
The whole
noticed that as well. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't know why. Maybe it's the childish delight of being in a fantasy environment, but it just seems to be the case. Um, and I started saying I feel awkward, and that's partly because I think I already mentioned the only person I've had a character have any kind of romantic relationship with was Scratch, and he slept with Ezekiel. Um, so character-wise, I've only had a same-sex romantic relationship
Hmm.
in all of my playing, and I feel this sounds terrible, but I feel weird doing a doing a heterosexual romantic scenario, because I don't know how that would come across. I think I'm more worried about it being taken the wrong
Yeah,
way or about
I get
causing
that.
offense. But the guy that was playing Ezekiel he almost instigated it, and we you know got on well enough that we could just make have fun with it and be silly with it.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And then
I
he
don't
died.
I don't
And
think
then he died
this.
almost immediately.
I don't think it's ever too much. Like, you can go too much with it. I think it's all about what the table's comfortable with, how
Hmm.
they want to proceed, whether you want to fade to black or whether you want to describe like I don't need
Someone sticking
full
a thumb in your
details.
mouth.
Yeah, that was a turn of events. But yeah, I don't think you need to go. Like, there's no limit. I don't think it's all about your table. But for me, I don't think I need to know like, oh, I put it in so far and all this and all that. No, we can do. You getting dressed? Yeah, you getting. Oh, some people do. They get really graphic with it. But you can just do. We take our clothes off, we kiss, and we get on, and we have a good time, or we fumble around, roll around the room, or whatever you're into.
Sometimes I like
That's
playing
fine.
chicken with you though, Lee, and just see how far you want to go with it.
I might die. Like if somebody, I might die. I get so awkward.
But a lot of my games that I run, I have a lot of players end up sleeping together or forming relationships or with each other, or they will end up forming a relationship with another NPC. And like we've got a wedding, we had an engagement in the last one. We've had 2 relationships, I think, with Kane and Friedrich,
Mhm.
and yeah, so it happens. It's good. It's working well. Put you in a couple of awkward situations as well, Jason, with
Yeah.
Leia and Chef when you went in and started flirting with her, and then
Yeah.
she just popped the finger in your mouth, and
Definitely
that
an
was that.
18 plus game, Lee's games.
It is, but I don't feel. Sometimes I will feel a bit awkward, but that I think it's more like Joe said. I'm worried about what everybody else is thinking, because I want to be able to play that moment and give the player an authentic experience. Not as in I'm going to describe everything in detail, but that it means something like an emotional connection there for them, that this is happening and they're going through it. But I don't know how everybody at the table's taking it, and that's sometimes how I feel awkward. Sometimes I will not care one bit, and I can just run with it and do fine. But it's when I stop and think about it and get in my own head that I struggle with it.
Yeah, and I think that group on the first day, even prior to games, the talks get pretty graphic.
Yeah.
Without any D&D being involved. So I think that we're all quite comfortable talking about that stuff in general anyway. And then Kristin joins and we're in the middle of some kind of horrific description of something.
Yeah,
she's like, right, I'm going to leave again.
What's this now?
Wow.
Like, what are we talking about this time?
Listen, I mean, just let me be awkward.
You've been close to having a relationship
So
a couple of times.
the relationship that I was closest to having was with Cora. And now in my fantasy land, she has married this person and they have children and they are, doing well. But that was actually after that person left the campaign. But it was interesting because it was this awkward, like, Kristin, don't know how to read those kind of cues. Like, as a person, I definitely cannot read those kind of cues as a character, as it turns out, either. So I had a conversation with this person, and they said to me, like, oh, I thought that Cora was already Bark's girlfriend. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, Bark never said anything to her, but okay. Well, I mean, at least I know that we're on the same page with this now, right? And then, that person dropped out of the campaign again and broke Cora's heart again. But, like I said, she's good now. They're married. She's forgiven him, and they have babies, and those babies are doing great things too. But other than that, I don't.
I mean, a 2.0 sir gave Odo a little kiss.
That's
on
true.
A boat, no less.
On a boat.
Yeah.
Led him
Full
on.
on Titanic.
Very romantic.
No, she doesn't. She still doesn't have really any idea that Odo is interested.
man.
Like,
Alright,
Atusa
let
is
on.
Atusa very specifically is very Kristin in that way, because she's a half-orc who has been judged as being ugly and strong and not feminine and this, that, the other thing. And the only relationship that she has had was basically this person wanting her because he thought that she was basically good stock. And this is the one that you had the opportunity to maybe meet, but I was like, let's just go. And he abused her, and then he set her up, and he was literally trying to get her killed because she rejected him. And like that is the extent of Atuza's relationships.
hmm
So yeah, she didn't know what's going on.
Which is interesting because in that sense, Odo is very much Joe as well, just completely oblivious and naive and fairly
What?
useless. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah.
Willie's gonna have to do something there, I think.
Oh God. If we ever get
You
back to
were
the boat.
like fucked each other.
Yeah.
My
I'll be
favorite
there.
thing about all of that, talking about relationships of all sorts, you have a family member in that boat
Mhm.
scenario who is actively like, well, I'm going to give him relationship tips. And
I
I'm like,
Yeah.
cool.
know.
Like,
So for anybody listening that doesn't know, my oldest child is in that little one-shot chronicle with us. And Joe actually reached out to me one day. He's like, I just want to make sure this isn't too awkward for your kid. I was like, my kid absolutely loves what's happening. And I don't know, I haven't sat down to process that. But he is taking on like, I'm going to be your wingman. I'm going to give you advice to go and like try and
Number
hook
one
up
is
with
very
my mom's
mature,
character.
though, isn't he? And we've spoken about number
He
one in
is.
the past. He is very in touch with his emotions and reality,
Mhm.
and so
He is.
there's no problem playing this kind of stuff out with number one. He's
No,
a pretty cool kid.
he is a super cool kid. Um, But yeah, you were talking family member. I was like, Jet? No, no, no. Well, that's right. It's my kid, which makes it even more awkward. But it's great. It's great. Okay, well, that just about wraps up another episode of this podcast. Thank you so much to my lovely group of friends for continuing to entertain me and keeping these conversations going. A special thanks to each and every one of you listening. When we say we're so happy you're here, we truly mean it. The world would not be the same without you. And I challenge you to take some time this week and tell a couple of people some things you really like about them. For you, it might just be a passing comment, but your words might be exactly what they need to hear and maybe even stick with them for the rest of their life. From all of us here, stay cool, kids. But if you can't be cool, be wicked. Until next time. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Boy.
Wherever you found us today, don't forget to like and subscribe for more great content. And if you want to find out more about what we do, how to support us, pick up some merch and find links to our friends like JB Media, visit us at wickedcoolkids.co.uk.
Come here.